really good, well-known people in our league. I'm not discrediting them. Like, we have a lot of badasses in our league.
Early on, with the first couple injuries, I was like, oh, like I need to get back. I'm gonna go to every road game, no matter what, like whether I'm playing or not.
The league is filled with talented and respected players, and no one is trying to take anything away from them. There are many incredible competitors competing at the highest level, and their impact on the game is undeniable. Early on, when the first few injuries occurred, the frustration of being away from the court was difficult to ignore. The determination to return as quickly as possible grew stronger, and there was a commitment to stay close to the team by attending road games and supporting them whether playing or not. Inside the Indiana Fever camp, the atmosphere had already been intense, but Caitlin Clark's recent announcement elevated that energy to an entirely different level. When Clark informed her teammates that she planned to return to the court, Sophie Cunningham and Lexie Hall were left visibly stunned. Their reactions reflected a mix of shock, excitement, and pure adrenaline. The moment immediately sparked conversation among fans, analysts, and the basketball community, many believing this development could completely transform the direction of the Fever's season. What followed showed exactly why this moment carried such significance. The instant reactions from Sophie and Lexie told the whole story. Inside the Phoenix Mercury's training gym, the environment had been filled with the focused silence that comes when athletes are pushing themselves to the limit. Sneakers lightly squeaked across the polished hardwood floor, while the rhythmic bounce of basketballs echoed against the high walls of the facility. Every player was fully engaged in their drills until a few unexpected words shattered the concentration like a sudden thunderclap. Sophie Cunningham, known for her fiery personality and relentless playing style, froze in the middle of a movement. She blinked several times, almost as if she wanted to make sure she had heard correctly. Then her voice cut sharply through the gym as she reacted without hesitation. Her surprised exclamation echoed through the space, revealing genuine disbelief. It was more than simple shock. It was the type of reaction that makes your heart race and leaves you momentarily speechless. For quite some time, Sophie had been mentally preparing herself for a demanding season without Caitlin Clark on the court. She had already accepted that reality and had begun adjusting her mindset to the challenges ahead. Her thoughts had been focused on new strategies, altered lineups, and creative ways to compensate for the absence of a player whose influence could reshape the entire team. She had prepared herself for greater responsibility, additional pressure, and countless moments that would require digging deeper than ever before. But with a single announcement, those expectations suddenly flipped upside down. Before Sophie could fully process what had just happened, Lexie Hall responded in her own way. Unlike Sophie's explosive reaction, Lexie's surprise appeared gradually. A smile slowly formed across her face as excitement began to shine through her expression. Her eyes brightened with the kind of enthusiasm only a dedicated competitor could understand. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm but filled with conviction as she explained that this development changed everything. Even though her tone was quieter, the meaning behind her words carried just as much power. It was easy to imagine the thoughts racing through her mind as possibilities began forming instantly. Strategies, offensive plays, and new opportunities were already taking shape. She could picture how Caitlin's return would stretch opposing defenses, create open scoring chances, and add a new rhythm to the team's offense. Lexie slowly shook her head, still processing the reality unfolding in front of her. The reactions from both players felt genuine, spontaneous, and completely unscripted. It wasn't a staged moment for cameras or carefully rehearsed interviews. It was a real and honest response from teammates realizing the significance of the situation. In that brief instant, an unspoken understanding passed between them. The road ahead, which had previously seemed like a difficult uphill challenge, suddenly looked different. Hope had returned in a way that no one expected. Caitlin Clark's presence represented far more than simply adding another talented player to the roster. It symbolized a shift in momentum and a new wave of energy flowing through the entire team. With her return came a shared belief that the season might hold far greater possibilities than anyone had imagined. Instead of simply trying to endure the challenges ahead, the team could now aim for something truly remarkable. Sophie's excitement grew rapidly as she imagined what the team could accomplish together. Her thoughts raced toward the defensive intensity they could create, the quick transitions during fast breaks, and the creative passes that could leave opponents struggling to react. She realized that her own role might change once again, but this time the change did not feel overwhelming. Instead, it felt like an opportunity. Meanwhile, Lexie's imagination was filled with the thrill of possibility. She pictured the roar of the crowd when Caitlin stepped onto the court again, the chemistry developing between teammates, and the clutch moments that could turn close games into victories. The idea alone sent a surge of adrenaline through her. This announcement had not simply adjusted their plans for the season, it had rewritten the narrative before it had even begun. As the gym slowly returned to its usual rhythm, basketballs began bouncing again and the sound of sneakers sliding across the floor filled the air once more. Yet something had clearly changed. There was a new feeling lingering in the atmosphere, something neither Sophie nor Lexie could fully describe. It was excitement, certainly, but it was also deeper than that. It felt like destiny had offered the team another opportunity to achieve greatness. Naturally, many people began wondering what had caused such an intense reaction from Sophie Cunningham and Lexie Hull. The answer lies in the atmosphere surrounding that moment and the significance of Caitlin Clark's decision. What began as an ordinary training session inside the Phoenix Mercury's state-of-the-art practice facility soon transformed into a turning point. The day had started in a familiar way, filled with the usual sounds and energy of professional athletes working toward improvement. The scent of freshly polished hardwood floors blended with the determination that filled the room. Basketballs struck the court rhythmically while coaches shouted instructions from the sidelines. Sophie Cunningham moved through drills with her usual intensity, eyes locked on each task as if every practice could determine the outcome of an entire season. A short distance away, Lexie Hull matched that same determination. Her movements were sharp and precise as she attacked each drill with focus and aggression. She wasn't simply practicing to get better, she was practicing to win. Fatigue might have been present, but it never weakened her resolve. The session followed its normal routine until something in the air began to shift. Lexie Hull kept her eyes fixed on Caitlin, almost as if she were trying to read her body language before a single word was spoken. Lexie wasn't the type to jump to conclusions, but something in the atmosphere felt unusually tense, like the calm before a storm. Caitlin stood confidently in front of her teammates, her hands resting behind her back as her gaze slowly moved around the room. There was no nervous movement or hesitation in her posture. Instead, she carried a calm confidence that naturally commanded attention even before she began speaking. She took a slow breath, allowing the anticipation to build for just a moment longer. Then a small, knowing smile appeared on her face. "I've made my decision," she said, her voice steady yet charged with energy. The brief pause that followed made several players shift slightly in their seats. Sophie Cunningham raised an eyebrow, preparing herself for whatever announcement was coming next. Lexie's eyes narrowed slightly as she focused even harder. "I'm playing again." The words landed with the force of a thunderclap. For a moment, the room went completely silent. It felt as though the air itself had frozen. Sophie's jaw dropped instantly. This wasn't her usual playful reaction or sarcastic grin. This was pure, unfiltered shock. Her eyes widened as she processed what had just been said. Lexie blinked several times, as if double-checking whether she had heard correctly. Then a slow smile spread across her face, a mixture of disbelief and excitement. It was the type of expression someone shows when unexpected good news suddenly changes everything. The two players exchanged a quick glance. In that silent moment, it felt like an entire conversation had passed between them. Sophie's look seemed to say, "Did she really just say that?" Lexie's grin practically replied, "Yes, she absolutely did." Around the room, reactions began to ripple outward. Some players leaned back in surprise, others smiled widely, and a few gasped quietly in disbelief. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark remained standing calmly, her smile growing slightly as she watched the reactions unfold. She understood exactly how important this moment was. This wasn't just a personal update. It was news that would send waves across the entire WNBA. Everyone in that room knew it. For Sophie and Lexie, the moment would remain unforgettable. Expectations that had been built around playing without Clark suddenly shattered, replaced by the thrilling reality that Caitlin Clark was preparing to return to the court. And judging by the determined look in her eyes, she wasn't coming back just to participate. She was coming back to win. Naturally, the next question quickly followed. How would Caitlin Clark's teammates respond to her return, and what kind of impact could it truly have? The effect was immediate. As soon as Caitlin revealed her decision, the atmosphere inside the Phoenix Mercury practice facility changed instantly. Only moments earlier, the gym had been filled with the routine sounds of practice, sneakers sliding across the floor, basketballs bouncing, and drills being run with steady rhythm. Suddenly the entire space felt alive with a different kind of energy, sharper, more electric, and full of possibility. Sophie Cunningham, already known for her passionate personality, could barely contain her excitement. She began pacing along the sideline, her sneakers tapping quickly against the hardwood as her thoughts raced ahead. She wasn't simply reacting emotionally. She was already imagining what Caitlin's return could mean for the team. In her mind, every play looked sharper, every pass more precise. She pictured defensive rotations clicking perfectly into place, fast breaks turning into highlight reel moments, and the team's chemistry reaching a completely new level. Nearby, Lexie Hull stood still for a moment as the realization fully settled in. Her expression brightened as she processed the implications. She didn't just see a teammate returning to the lineup. She saw a transformation in the team's entire offensive and defensive structure. Her imagination filled with vivid scenarios, pinpoint passes cutting through defenders, wide-open three-pointers falling through the net, and Caitlin creating scoring opportunities from angles that would leave opponents scrambling. For Lexie, the moment wasn't simply about welcoming back a talented player. It was about unlocking the kind of chemistry that teams spend entire seasons trying to build. What made the moment even more powerful was that Sophie and Lexie weren't reacting only as teammates or friends. They were reacting as leaders who understood the broader impact of the decision. Both players recognized the strategic advantage it created. They understood the boost it would give to team morale and the message it would send across the league. The Phoenix Mercury were not simply aiming to compete. Caitlin's decision represented belief in the team's direction, in the culture they had built together, and in the vision of what they could accomplish as a group. Confidence like that spreads quickly inside a locker room. From that moment forward, practice sessions took on a completely different tone. Every drill carried greater intensity. Every scrimmage felt more competitive. The players weren't just preparing for another stretch of games. They were stepping into the beginning of a new chapter for the franchise, one fueled by renewed unity, an unexpected twist in the season, and a shared determination to prove what they were capable of. Even without Caitlin Clark on the court for long stretches, the Indiana Fever had managed to stay competitive. During her absence, the team fought hard and maintained a respectable record, showing resilience and determination despite losing their biggest star. That achievement alone was impressive, especially considering Clark had missed a large portion of the season. Still, the difference with her on the floor is undeniable. While players like Kelsey Mitchell delivered explosive scoring performances and others stepped up with consistent contributions, the unique offensive spark Caitlin provides simply cannot be duplicated. Statistics reveal the contrast clearly. When Clark plays, Indiana's offensive production rises dramatically, ranking among the most efficient attacks in the entire WNBA. Without her, the offense tends to settle closer to league average despite the strong efforts of the rest of the roster. At first glance, the team's record without her might suggest they managed just fine. However, numbers alone don't tell the entire story. History has shown similar situations before. When the Chicago Bulls continued winning games after Michael Jordan's departure in the early 1990s, it appeared on the surface that they had barely slowed down. In reality, factors like favorable schedules and exceptional performances from role players masked how much they truly missed their superstar. A similar situation exists with the Fever. The team deserves credit for remaining competitive during Clark's absence. Their resilience and mental toughness have allowed them to stay in the playoff conversation despite the challenge of losing their franchise player. Those difficult stretches may even benefit them later by strengthening their depth, teaching them to share scoring responsibilities, and reinforcing trust across the entire roster. However, the numbers make one truth clear. Caitlin Clark elevates the Indiana Fever from a solid team to a legitimate championship contender. Her vision, scoring ability, leadership, and playmaking give the team a level of offensive creativity that very few players in the league can match. If Indiana hopes to make a serious run toward a WNBA title rather than simply appearing in the playoffs, they will need Clark healthy, rested, and performing at her best. Throughout the season, the Fever have walked a delicate balance, proving they can survive without their star while also recognizing that their true potential appears when she leads the offense. As the postseason approaches, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. If Indiana is going to chase a championship, the path forward runs straight through Caitlin Clark. So what do you think about the reactions from Sophie Cunningham and Lexie? And how big of an impact do you believe Caitlin Clark's return will have on the Fever season? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.